G'day, this is Captainoob, and this is a Basilisk, not to be confused with the Basilisk from the second Harry Potter movie, Childhood Nightmares Ho. Did you know that they made up that monster with both practical and CGI effects? That's why it looks so good, particularly for those close-up shots. They actually went and made a 25-foot-long animatronic just to get that working well, and that's why it's aged well in its sort of quality of CGI, kind of like the T-Rex from the original Jurassic Park movie. But anyways, let's stop talking about movies and trivia. We're talking about the gun. So the Basilisk is a COD-ported weapon from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the new one. It's a double-action revolver chambered in what is usually the 500 Smith & Wesson rounds, which are a little bit bigger than your standard 44 Magnum rounds, packing a whole lot more power and stopping power and recoil behind them. Here's a shot for comparison. But since the closest approximation of the vanilla ammo types is 44 Magnum, this thing will just use them instead. 226 damage right off the bat is actually not too bad. There's custom sounds and reload animations, custom firing animations, which are a little bit more apparent on a revolver, which is nice. We'll get to those as we get to those, but for now, we'll start with the legendary effects. You can chuck one of these on. Instigating would be pretty devastating on this one, but we'll leave it. Right now, I've got Iron Sight, so you can throw on a bunch of these generically named Call of Duty sights, which are pretty much approximations of what they are in real life. That's a PKS holder, and that looks like a Russian Cobra red dot sight, so that's nice. We'll put something subtle on there, and we'll move on from that. You'll find that most of these attachments are basically the same as what you get from Call of Duty as well. There's also a scope down here, which I'm going to be utilizing on one of these things because a sniping Magnum like this, I feel like, is a good idea. You can have a laser sight on this, and once this laser sight goes on, then that's not coming off. This one here looks like it's coming straight out of the barrel. It's actually just mounted on the side there next to the grip. Also, you might notice that there's this giant moon clip thing on the back. We'll get to that in a second, don't you worry. You can have a factory grip or some timber frame grips. Sorry, timber? Sorry, I'm a roofer by trade, so wooden furniture grips there, which look nice and comfortable. This one looks cool, though. Requires gun nut rank 2, so that leads me to believe that that's the superior looking one. And right now I've got FP rounds, the 500 Smith & Wesson. You can have armor piercing, frangible, hollow point, overpressure, or snake shot. Snake shot is like a little bit of a shotgun, so if you pair that with an explosive legendary effect, you'll find yourself doing a whole lot more damage than normal. Overpressure gives us 292 damage, which is a whole lot of damage, and having a armor-piercing version of that, I think, is a cool idea. It actually changes the rounds within the moon clip, too, so there you go. That's why it's on the outside of it, and the little snake shots are like a tiny little baby 12-gauge buckshot, just ready to grow up and be fired outside of a revolver instead. Now, you can have something on the muzzle, like a flash hider, a compensator. These don't reduce your range, possibly reduce some of your recoil, so if you don't want to break your wrist whilst firing this, then you can throw a compensator on. You can have a sleight of hand perk to make that reload slightly faster, which is nice, and you can use a different set of loaders if you feel like it. A rapid loader here, say, will reduce the amount of reserve ammo. I think that's probably just a copy-paste from Call of Duty. There's no constraints on ammo on this, either capacity or the amount you can hold, unless you're playing on survival mode, and that reduces the weight. But the rapid loader, I feel like that's going to make it reload faster, so we'll do that. Fine. And we've also got a factory trigger. You can have different amounts of triggers. This one will actually increase your fire rate, a match grade trigger, or a MTA, which I'm not sure what that means, but this match grade increases our fire rate ever so slightly, so we'll throw that on. You can have a different barrel on this, including a snub barrel, which, unless you want a giant fireball on the end of your revolver, then I would not recommend putting a short barrel on a weapon of this caliber. Also, you'll notice that there's a cube on the end of that there laser sight. Interesting. I think that's a bug. You've also got this giant long-ass barrel here that'll give you the best amount of range. For performance purposes, that's it. And I think I've just lost my muzzle slot doing that. No, I can just chuck on a different muzzle brake. Fine, that'll work. Now, you've also noticed that I went over the factory receivers. You can crank this all the way up to 519 damage. Yes, please. Very good. And that's about it. None of this fluffy, advanced, hardened, etc. This is just receiver upgrades 1 through 5, And there's one of our basilisks. We'll create a couple more of these, and we'll see you out there. Getting the basilisk in-game is rather easy. It's just dropped in at Fort Hagen. Now, what you want to do to get this really easily is obviously progress through the story that'll actually allow you access to Fort Hagen, and then you want to take this storm escape thing, this roof hatch, down. This will get you fairly close to where you need to go. Just simply walk out to the skeleton, hang a right, and you'll find it next to what would usually be a guns and bullets, but we've already maxed those out with other means, so we won't pick that up. But there's your basilisk sitting there on the table in the kitchen, as it were. Welcome to Immersive Gunners Plaza. We're about to big iron all of these gunners. And by the way, if you think big iron's good, you should check out the rest of Mighty Robin's music, because there's a lot better songs in his discography than Big Iron. Anyways, this is the basilisk in first person, aiming down sights. Looks a little bit like that. Funnily enough, you don't seem to get that much of a zoom in at all. If you want to zoom in, obviously there's a scoped variant that you can use, which I think we'll make advantage of just to get as much sniping as we can get in our initial attack. We've also got a snub nose version because, you know, we're going to make a giant fireball as we kill gunners. And we've also got this one with snake shot, complete with the explosive legendary effect. You might notice how there's this weird glowing cube thing at the end of my laser sight. That's just there. It's been a bug that's been reported, but I don't think anything's been done about it. Whether I'm missing something that I need to get that to work, I'm not sure, but as far as it goes for a reference of where I'm going to aim, that's fine. It's at the center of the screen. I can live with that. And another quick look in third person for the rest of these variants. I think this thing looks really good with a scope. Only thing that I'm sort of thinking is that I feel like the revolver should be bigger with a giant caliber, but never mind. The Nova-sized revolver, this is just not one of them. So let's get started. We'll use this sniping scoped variant here, which I think I had that crosshair lined up, but apparently I didn't, so I'm going to go and take out the turrets because they don't move out of the way when I'm shooting at them. And I suppose what I should do is get myself into some little bit of cover and see if I can pick off some of these guys. That's a kill. Almost got that one in the head. And it won't be long until they detect us, so we'll try to get as much fun as we can get with this scoped variant before they are onto me. And now they are. So I suppose we'll just keep going for a while. We're not being supercharged down just yet, although that'll change in a second. You'll notice that the recoil animation is pretty massive. The camera does go up a little bit, but if you fire this thing fast enough, the visual recoil in this thing doesn't matter, and you can tell when in first person and firing this thing rapidly. In order to get the follow-up shot, the gun will just rapidly jolt down when you pull the trigger. So whether this thing was meant to have a specific set rate of fire or whether they changed it just to make the animation slightly faster, I'm not sure. Now, time to bring out the VATS weapon. So with this thing chambering the big old bullets, it's doing, yeah, we've got 5 in the cylinder at a time, so it's not a whole lot, but with this particular setup, I'll be able to waste a crit on that particular gunner for starters, but with Gun Fu, I might be able to take advantage of a one-shot kill on a lot of these gunners. Now, using a pistol in VATS like this, a VATS critical revolver, which sends gunners flying, by the way, gunner space program, get around it. Well, it's tactically advantageous to use these types of weapons, and there's a reload in third person, just in case you want to see it from the front. It's tactically advantageous to utilize revolver type weapons like this in VATS, where you've got a high amount of damage, but a slow fire rate and an accuracy, which is okay sometimes, but you want to make use of your shots whenever you can get them. So utilizing this thing in a VATS role, definitely recommended. Not that it doesn't have the power to hold its own without the use of VATS. If you want to aim it yourself, you can still do a fairly decent amount of damage to these angry dudes right there. But in terms of shooting stuff and killing them in one hit for the most bullet efficiency that you can get, then I would highly recommend just using this thing in VATS. You can tell that it's a 44 Magnum bullet using those special slowdown bats projectiles there. And time to move on to my second secret weapon. This one's Snake Shot, complete with explosive rounds. So it doesn't even matter if I hit them. If I hit the ground near them, they'll still die in a fairly rapid manner, which is great because if they die, they're not shooting at me and I'm not losing health and I won't die myself. That's how it works. I think I just took a direct hit of an M84 Gustav and I survived it. We packed a flak jacket in here today. Speaking of armor, I think I could probably use one of these things at the moment. Just get a little bit of extra protection whilst I'm sitting in literally no cover and every gunner and their mother is shooting at me. Probably best time to move on, but I am lacking this explosive snake shot variant, which I think I'm cheating by putting the explosive thing on, but I don't think I'd like the damage as much if I didn't. I suppose you could say that it gives you a little bit more leniency on shots that wouldn't normally make the hit using the snake shot here, but how could I not use an explosive variant of this? Actually, we could test the spread right here, right now by shooting at this wall. It's a fairly tight spread regardless, so maybe it wouldn't be as generous on missed shots. And something's happening up there. Stop that, you. Let's switch over back to the scoped version because we've got a bit of distance between our enemies. One thing I wish it would have is these tiny little crosshairs that I'm seeing on this see-through scope. It's, it may have been ported directly from Call of Duty, but I can barely see it. I'm gonna have to, like, draw a dot in the middle of the screen or get a little app to cast one there because I literally cannot see where the center of that is. Maybe I'm just blind. Every day out in the sun has ruined my eyeballs. Although, I'm thinking the nerd rage is coming on here, so we'll try to get as much use out of this as possible whilst the gunners lean through that tree around me. Kind of expected more damage out of that. Especially from a revolver of this caliber, that's for sure. Maybe we haven't quite triggered the correct perk to use yet. Or maybe we have now. No, it's still fairly normal. For some reason, Nerd Rage has been lazy in its activation. We get the slowdown, but I don't think I've seen that much in the way of extra damage. Now, let's talk about fire rate, because the fire rate on this thing is fast. I did touch on this earlier when I commented about how the animations reset, but one of the big things that I don't like about the revolvers in the game, both the 44 Magnum Vanilla and the Western revolver, is having to pull back the hammer. So I did make specific mention of double action, and that is a very valuable asset to have, because normally the revolvers, they don't fire very fast, which again is why you'd want to use them in VATS, but having that double action allows you just to make those quick rapid follow-up shots, just get that little bit extra DPS that you wouldn't otherwise. So yeah, this revolver, normally I don't like modded gun revolvers because the mod authors always seem to balance them around what is already there in the vanilla game, but this has actually been done well. This is a revolver that I enjoy using, which is fascinating. It's one of the firsts. Normally I don't like revolvers. You can go and watch my older videos where I do test revolvers. I'm always frustrated by the end because they just don't kill fast enough or don't do their job well enough compared to anything with a magazine, or especially a suppressor. But this thing's done well. That guy's got an RPG. He's gone for the proper door breach weapon, decided not to fire it. He fired it around the corner, blew his load too early, and now he's paying for it, I suppose. But let's just rapid fire this guy in close quarters. Maybe we'll switch over to the fireball maker here. Finish him off. Struggling a little bit with the accuracy in combination with the 5-round cylindrical magazine, the tube, if you will. But we made it in the end, and I think it is time to fight monsters, which normally I would say don't even bother with revolvers. But this thing, coupled with the explosive legendary effect on this snake shot, I think we can do it. So here we go. Now, Swan's a big dumb target, so no excuse for missed shots here. I will, however, start off this fight by utilizing as many sneak criticals as possible, and I think if we get all headshots with this thing, we can do really well just to whittle his health down to basically nothing. Now, I'm actually surprised here that we don't get less VAT shots than we had with the stubbed barrel version with a reflex sight, but there you go. We get 6. What if it'd make more sense to tune the VAT's AP costs and make it have like a 5-round maximum so you can get through a cylinder at a time? Or maybe the modder was just very impressed with their porting of the animation that they wanted us to see it in third person whilst utilizing in VATs all the time. And now I'm going to run before I get my ass handed to me. Those precious AP that I'm giving away here. And back over to regular pistol for a second, just so we can see how it would go. 294 damage is not too bad, considering the ability to fire it rapidly. And if we can sneak a nice little headshot here and there. He threw that rock backwards, and then it levitated above me just to hit me. I'm not even mad, I'm impressed. That was awesome. Every now and then, Todd makes his AI creatures do something awesome, and that was the occasion right then. Back over to Snake Shot now. We'll bring the Rain of Pain on him. It's a lot of good damage we're getting out of that. 145 for those. I'm not actually sure whether... I'm going to say that the crit damage does apply to all of the sub-projectile explosions here. Maybe not the explosion itself, but the sub-projectiles. Look at that rock flying in the air like that, breaking the laws of physics like it's nobody's business. Pretty standard from use one. Now I'm going to stand back and try to dodge some of these rocks that he's throwing at me, because I'm nearing Nerd Rage and I don't want to be there. And if I can zero in, hit headshots, then we're going to be in pretty good shape to win this fight without dying. Doing it first try as well. It's pretty nice. Occasionally, I will choke and not do this first try, but it's been a pretty comfortable, cruisy day here with this revolver, I think. I've activated Nerd Rage there. Taking those risks just to get that extra damage, and I might just hip fire this thing. There we go. Good big iron. Good stuff. Alright, so I think I'm going to leave it there for the Basilisk. It's a fun weapon to use. A revolver that's fun. There's something new that you don't see every day. So, if you're impressed by what you saw here, if you're in a survival playthrough, especially where ammo is heavy, and I mean 44 Magnum rounds are going to be pretty heavy, but if you want a lot of bang for your buck in terms of shot to damage ratio, this is a pretty good choice, because you don't really need to have super heavy rifles in survival. You can get by with using pistols with decent legendary modifiers. Not that you'll find a decent legendary modifier for this one under normal circumstances, but I think it's worth having anyway. And if you do play on lesser difficulties, you'll just trounce everything just like that. But I think it's balanced pretty well to be utilized, even on very high difficulty, which is not a thing I can say for every single weapon I use, but it's great, it's fun to use, and I want to point that out. Links in the description if you want. Thank you very much for watching.